Helmuth Steiger, born in Switzerland in 1902, was an aircraft designer and by the late 1920s was working for William Beardmore. Steiger's experience at Beardmore's, particularly with the overweight, underpowered Beardmore Inflexible, a prototype bomber built to German Rohrback patents, led him to design a totally new wing structure. The Steiger Monospar wing used a single deep spar built up as a girder, with compression struts mounted fore and aft. Diagonal bracing running from the ends of the compression struts under and over the spar made for a wing that was both lightweight and very stiff in torsion. In 1929, the Monospar Wing Company was formed, with Steiger as chief designer. They commissioned the Gloucester Aircraft Company to build a prototype aircraft. It was to be powered by two Red Rupp axial engines, but these never left the drawing board. Instead, it was fitted with two 50 horsepower Sampson engines and first flew in December 1930. Even the Air Ministry was impressed by Steiger's design. They commissioned Gloucesters to build, at a cost of £4,100, an entire new wing for their Fokker trimotor. The Monospar trimotor was test flown by Harry Schofield in December 1931 and then dispatched to Farnborough for experimental work. 6 months later, Schofield flew the definitive prototype of the Monospar from Croydon. The Monospar company had been absorbed into General Aircraft Limited. They had developed the Monospar ST4 with two 80 horsepower Pobjoy radial engines and folding wings. With room for a pilot and 3 passengers, the Monospar ST4 was an immediate success. In total, 28 were built. The ingenious structure of the Monospar only accounted for 26% of its all-up weight. The top boom of the wing spar continued as an external strut, running straight through the fuselage behind the pilot's seat. The rear fuselage structure was just as unusual, using a girder made of 4 longerons arranged in a diamond pattern. With a decent payload and economical to operate, the Monospar soon found favour as an air taxi and small airliner. A retractable version, the ST6, was developed, although only 2 were built. In 1934, the ST4 became the ST10, with two 90 horsepower Pobjoy Niagara engines fitted. Harry Schofield, accompanied by Helmuth Steiger, flew the first production model to victory in the 1934 King's Cup Air Race. A retractable version of the ST10, named inevitably the ST11, only 2 were built, both were sold to Australia. The first went out by steamer, but the second was flown. An easy method to improve performance was to fit more power. The ST12 was basically an ST10, but with two 130 horsepower Gypsy engines. Of the 10 built, 4 were exported to Australia. 3 went to New England Airways of Sydney, where they were named after captains of an earlier era. The 4th aircraft, with a pilot, 2 passengers, and a young crocodile bound for Melbourne Zoo on board, had a forced landing in the outback. 1 passenger walked 40 miles to summon help. The pilot and the other passengers stayed with the aircraft. The crocodile wasn't so lucky. He was served up for lunch. In November 1935, Harry Schofield test flew the Monospar ST18, named the Croydon. The Croydon was to have been fitted with a pair of Bristol Aquila sleeve valve engines, but these engines never reached full production. Instead, it was fitted with a pair of Pratt & Whitney Wasp Juniors of 450 horsepower. In spite of meeting all performance expectations, no orders were forthcoming. In July 1936, the aircraft departed Helmuth on a sales tour to Australia. Damaged on landing in Jask, Iran, it didn't reach Australia till September. Considerable interest was shown, but no orders were forthcoming, and the following month the aircraft headed north. Departing Darwin on the 7th of October 1936, the ST-18 headed towards Kopang in Timor. Possibly due to a faulty compass or bad directional bearings from the wireless station at Darwin, the ST-18 ended up hundreds of miles off course. By an amazing slice of good fortune, the crew were able to avoid ditching by landing on Seringapatam Reef. Unfortunately, the tailwheel collapsed after landing. The Croydon was left to its fate, but not before the crew managed to take these remarkable photographs. They took to their rubber boat and were rescued by fishermen. Cutting their losses, General Aircraft Limited concentrated their efforts on the continued production and development of their most successful model, the ST-25. Introduced in 1935, the ST-25 was an improved ST-10 with a fifth folding seat, extended cockpit glazing, and provision for a wireless. It was built at General Aircraft Limited's new factory at Helmuth Airpark. Available as a passenger aircraft, freighter, or air ambulance, the ST-25 was further developed with increased dihedral and twin fins and rudders. In total, 30 of the twin fin variety, known as the Universal, were produced. Of course, some aircraft were lost to accidents. Bill Davis and his 3 passengers were killed in March 1938 when the engines failed on the Monospar shortly after takeoff. The cause of the accident was that most simple of problems: the fuel was turned off. The Air Ministry bought 4 Monospars. 3 were perfectly ordinary Universals, the 4th especially adapted with a tricycle undercarriage. Monospars proved popular on both sides of the Spanish Civil War, and by 1939 any serviceable aircraft in Great Britain were impressed into military service. Today, out of a total of 105 Monospars built, only 2 survive. This one, originally named Captain Cook, was bought by Dr. John Morris in 1957. In 1961, accompanied by Bruce Harrison, he flew it from Australia to London. It's now on display in the Newark Air Museum in Nottinghamshire. The second aircraft, an ST-25 ambulance, survives in a museum in Helsingør in Denmark. For a long time there was a third survivor. New Zealander Pete Van Ash bought a Monospar in 1936. Used for mapping and aerial photography, he owned it for nearly 50 years. Unfortunately, in 1986, it caught fire during routine maintenance and was destroyed. As for the Monospar Fokker, it was withdrawn from service in 1934. The following year it was sold to entrepreneur Monty Hartfield. With a delightful play on words, it became Monty's Mono Bar, serving refreshments to the bathing beauties of Canvey Island. Thank you for watching.